What do you think of the DSM?
Is the DSM unfairly pigeonholing us?
Do psychological diagnoses only exist to control us? Okay, welcome to another kitchen sink microscopy. And you know my name. You also know what you have to do: like and share and subscribe. This is your patriotic duty.
Well, I'm Eric Rosenblatt, and as all of you know, Casey and we write our own music. So there's probably going to be some kind of musical adventure at the end of this episode. Maybe something new, maybe something old, or something old retold. So, Casey, what do you want to talk about today?
Um, I always rail on the Bible for not like updating itself so much, right? Same with the Constitution. But there's another book that people lean real heavy on, and it hardly ever gets updated. And even when it does, it doesn't really get better. It often kind of gets worse, I think. But that would be the DSM.
Oh, yeah. Oh man, that so psychiatry
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah.
Um,
Which
which
is like, yeah, okay, like there's merit to, like, I don't want to put down, forms of therapy or, balancing chemical imbalances, because that's all very important stuff. But
yeah, it is.
like the propensity to create buckets to put people in and treat them all exactly the same, well, that comes up to the equality versus equity question again.
Well, and also it's kind of verging on this whole well, yeah, everybody's different, but somehow our differences are diseases as far as psychiatry is concerned, in my view.
Right.
I don't think there's not really anything wrong with people. Um, sure, there are people who have faults, things that don't quite work right. But this idea, like reading the DSM, I have a copy of the DSM-4, and reading that, it's like literally everything is a disease.
Oh,
you
yeah.
you cannot exist without being somehow beset upon by some kind of mental illness.
And I wonder how much of these mental illnesses are just cultural differences. Like
Mhm.
how diverse is this book? Because like if you go over to Asia, a lot of the customs and cultures there are seen as rude by Westerners and vice versa. But
Mhm.
like if you applied the DSM to that stuff, you might be misdiagnosing somebody when it's really just a cultural norm, you know,
That's a good point. That
more of a sociological matter than a psychological matter.
yeah, that's a really good point. It, it yeah. Oh man.
I mean, everything about the way we're raised is based on a philosophy, which when you kind of break it apart, culture is just made up of like pockets of shared philosophies, right?
Hmm.
And so like either there really is no diseases at all, or we're just all diseased. Like, yeah.
Well, and if we're all diseased, this is the thing. This is something that like the DSM illustrated to me is that basically if you're alive, you have a mental illness, which doesn't make sense to me because you know we've been as humans surviving on this planet for tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years. Like, sure, there are wibbly wobbly bits, things that don't quite fit together, but like, we're not inherently broken. And things like the DSM kind of indicate that we are, which I don't understand.
Yeah, I mean, if it, eh, I mean, we can't really get away from talking about how incomplete our understanding of psychology related to biology. Like how much we don't know
which
is
is
far in
like
excess of what we do know.
most things we don't know. Yeah.
So, like, if you can point to a place on the brain that gets damaged and produces these symptoms, and work backward from those symptoms and be like, oh, you might have some brain damage. Let's take a look, and there it is. Like, well, okay, then the DSM would be, like doing some good. And I'm sure there probably are some parts in there that are like that, but for the most part, it feels like a soft science.
Yes, it is very from my experience, it comes across as very soft, very speculative. Like people are making the shit up on the fly and coming like proclaiming that they know the answer
Mhm.
in an authoritative way when really they don't. Like, the people who wrote that book don't know anything more than you or I
Yeah.
about the human mind.
Yeah. Like, do you think there's a real psychological difference between cell phone addiction and alcohol addiction?
Yeah, that's exactly. Or
I think the DSM-5 went and added this like cell phone addiction as a mental illness.
well, or internet addiction and
Yeah.
stuff. But it's not really any different than the same compulsions that compel people to say gamble or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, it's not really that different. So why make a distinction as if, oh, this particular thing is somehow remarkably separated from this other particular thing? Like, they're all kind of similar.
It's just a matter of preference, like it's an addiction, an
Mm.
addictive personality, and they prefer to do thing X over and over again. And then society decides that's not good anymore, and and then that it's a problem. The DSM is all about like people being inconvenienced and wanting to claim that the other person giving them the inconvenience must be diseased.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing that troubles me about the DSM. Um, have there been any solutions to mental illness? Are there is there a prescribed solutionary prescription, like a process you can follow to get out of whatever you're involved in?
Yeah, I mean, okay, the way I look at it is, stuff like therapy really does help,
I agree. Yes. No,
but
no. Like, yeah.
you're
Okay.
not fixing anything, though. You're not
No.
fixing anything. It's like yoga. Yoga won't fix
Yes.
shit. It just stretches you,
It
like
stretches
you're
you.
staying limber,
Yeah.
so you're less likely to, hurt
And
something.
therapy is kind of akin to that. I agree. I think that it's a good thing. Um, but this idea that somehow you're going to be all fixed up if you just go ahead and follow this particular process, everything's going to be fine. I don't think it will be. The,
Yeah. And I don't know, it's hard. It's hard to say that the whole thing is entirely useless. I mean, it's perfectly normal in the medical field to have textbooks with common problems and what the current understanding is to go about solving those problems. That's actually important, but I think it's the defining, like defining a person rather than um, looking into the root cause of it. It's more like you're just defining somebody by their symptoms and not even addressing really, like you just throw drugs at it. Like so many of these antidepressants and anti-anxiety drugs are the exact fucking same thing, and those two ailments are actually quite different. uh,
and those drugs don't necessarily alleviate those things.
right.
I I think it's important. Like the DSM to me is important because it's humans attempting to catalog the stuff that ails us. But there's a tendency out there to look at these things as if they're somehow authoritative, that oh, the DSM, the people who wrote the DSM, they're a bunch of gods, they know everything. No, they don't. They're literally no different than you or I. They're basically a bunch of people. They are as clueless as we are. um it's important though to kind of like put things on paper, in my opinion. um but the DSM doesn't offer any solutions other than prescription drugs, which, so here's the problem I have with psychiatry is um that the solutions to these problems lean quite heavily to taking very powerful psychoactive medications, as if the like your mental illness, if you can call it that, is a deficiency of this particular prescription drug that until last year didn't exist. uh, yeah.
Yeah. uh, I've really only had like one uh, real interaction with a psychiatrist, uh, with a dark period where I went through kind of a suicidal tendency, um, and went to check myself in. Like at the time of my suicidal intent, I happened to be uh, drunk, and I wasn't drunk the day before that, or the day after that, or the day that I checked myself in, but they put me in the fucking drunk tank
What?
and
What?
had me going to AA meetings and stuff. And then like 2 days in, I was um, like I don't relate to anybody or anything about this program in here. And they're like, oh, well, how long have you been sober? And it's like, I'm not an alcoholic. Like, really? Like, and so finally they moved me to a different wing. And then uh, I think I was just like sitting outside, and some doctor I hadn't met yet walked up to me introduced himself, sat down, and said, "You're bipolar." And I was like, "Nice to meet you too." Like, yeah. And they put me on some drug for like bipolar, and shooed me out the door in about a week. And I think I took it for like a year before I was like, um, I don't think I need that. Like I got to think about it. It's like I never really have these like roller coaster moments and stuff. Like, there was like a protracted series of bad events that kind of culminated in a certain way of thinking. That's life, you know.
Well, that's kind of what I was thinking about. Like it this whole idea of putting people in boxes um disturbs me. Like, we're talking about human beings. There, everybody goes through ups and downs and stuff. That's normal. Um, the idea that somehow your ups and downs and confusion about things is somehow a condition that, well, that's a very statist thing. Like, oh, hey, that's a very convenient position for me to insert myself into you and take control of your life. And I don't like that. Like, human beings are varied and colorful, and there are times where things don't necessarily work or jive or whatever. Um, and but if you look at the psychiatry documentation, basically everybody is somehow mentally ill, which, okay, at that point, I would have to say I'm going to have to call bullshit, because there's no way that everybody can be.
Here's how they could at least improve upon it. If
Mm,
every condition in there involved like tiers, like of severity, right? Like,
mm,
and you get scored on where you fall on that, right? Because when you brought up status, I started thinking like, oh yeah, like you can't own a gun if you've got certain mental conditions and stuff, but that's also a good thing. So like, you do kind of need that. But like the fact of the matter is, just like you're saying, we all have to some degree a lot of these problems. And if you just say, hey, you have violent tendencies, and it's like, well, I slam the table sometimes, like you can't not give me a gun because like
mm.
that would be dumb,
Well, in fact, statistically, a lot of the people who you would think would be most likely, the most likely to perform aggressive actions against their fellow humans are in fact the most likely to be victims of that. Um, so take that for what you will, but that is the thing.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good point. But of course, they can also be acting on that with a gun in their hand, and that's why, like it,
Well, yeah.
it, and that's where I think the tier system comes into play, because like there are, there's pressure valves at different places for people, like I have a certain point before things get physical where the steam just kind of goes out. It's like, okay, wait a minute, let the steam off. It's getting a little too far. Some
Mm-hmm.
people don't have it there. Some people it's a little higher. Some people attack the person they love, and then as soon as the steam has dissipated, they're like, "Oh shit," and they're like hating themselves and stuff. So, and then some people it's even higher, and they just don't even give a fuck, like, and somewhere above, you know, where I'm at, because like I've always, even if I've had a weapon with me and somebody punched me, I like took my knife out and handed it to my friend before before I like did something with it, like, so I'm so prone to avoiding violence that like I would say like anything above that level, that's where you should say, let's look twice before we give you a weapon, like.
Well, I like myself, I'm very inclined to be a hippie peacenik, even though I'm a heavily armed hippie peacenik. Um, but this is the thing that to me I think is really important. Psychiatry, psychology, it's really important that we try to analyze things and try to solve problems for the future. Like a lot of these systems, the DSM is okay. I'm gonna make up my own acronym. Dumb, stupid manual. It doesn't know anything. It like it's a bunch of people claiming they know things about things, but they don't. Like, but it's really important. Therapy is super important. Like it, it's helpful to uh, recognize that something's going on and feel okay dealing with that and talking with people, because honestly it doesn't, therapy is more talking with people than it is like a technical therapist. um it's super important to talk to people. um that th- people go through times in their lives where stuff is not exactly working out, and well, for the most part we're left alone. There's nobody behind us. And that's where a therapist comes in. Like, hey, a person you can talk to. It's really, really important to talk to people because, well,
It's a
I,
way of sorting things out for yourself,
yeah, yeah,
and getting a different perspective, and that's all very important. It occurs to me that if I remember correctly, we have a fan of the show that is in the field of psychology and is probably very irate right now and filling up the comments section. And what you said about like the DSM being full of like people that don't know anything. Well, I mean, it is technically data, right? Like all of
yeah,
these compiled things, but I say this time and again, data when it comes to human beings, you really gotta like, in psychology, I mean, you really got to take that with a grain of salt, because we have to describe to somebody what we're feeling in our minds. Like that's really
yes,
difficult to do, and there's a subjectivity not only in the way that we describe it to people, but in the way that they receive it.
yes.
How is that
Well,
data?
I mean, it's as data as we can get.
Yeah, I know.
Um, like what I take issue with the DSM is the same thing I take issue with these like dream books where people say, "Oh, well, you're dreamt of a horse. Um, that means this thing." No, it doesn't. You have to like that is not psychology. There's no universal interpretation of any symbology. Symbology is personal.
Yep.
Um, so, if you're a therapist, um, the only way to figure someone's problems out is to talk with them. In fact, well, you're probably actually more likely to help somebody by having a conversation. Just that
Right.
might be enough.
Well,
Like
I-
just for somebody to simply share their thoughts and feelings, that's extremely powerful. I,
oh, yeah, I say all the time that this show is actually kind of therapy,
mm-hmm.
because it's really a good sounding board for like getting shit off your chest and
Mm-hmm.
talking through other perspectives and challenging them with other ideas, other data, whatever,
Yeah.
and and it really helps you, like if you keep your mind open, and a good indicator that your mind is staying open is that you're not getting pissed off. Um,
Yeah.
because if you start getting pissed off, it's probably because you're a little irate that it's starting to look like you're wrong.
Well, okay, that's a really you bring up a really good point that emotion is a very effective indicator. Like it doesn't matter if we're right or wrong or have all the answers. Like if you become emotionally charged because of something, well, it's likely something's wrong. Um,
Yeah, I mean that's what emotion's there for.
yeah.
It's to indicate good and bad, effectively.
Well, yeah. Well, in a emotional standpoint, but it doesn't tell you that you're correct. Um, that, ooh, man, wow. Okay.
Hmm.
Huh. Well,
Yeah, but like I'm speaking of a specific emotion, and that's in like a conversation, and your idea is being challenged, and you're getting frustrated.
mhm.
Like that's an indicator that maybe your mind isn't open to at least process something. Now, of course, it's possible to get frustrated when you've been like providing rebuttals for these things and they just keep getting repeated back to you as if it'll change anything. that
Mhm.
that's an accurate like reason to get frustrated when you actually might be right.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
not like black and white, but
yeah, man. Wow. Huh.
we've never actually done like an episode on the art of argument, have we?
Mm-mm.
That would be a good one.
That would be.
I
Well,
did take an
so
argument class in college, I think.
it the emotional aspect, though, it's like, okay, so the state of the universe exists. It is what it is. Like, here's all the molecules, here's all the atoms. They are just there. You could get caught up in the weeds and try to argue. Well, it's like the whole flat earth thing, right? Like a bunch of people who are like, oh yeah, the earth is flat, like, and they get really emotionally involved. Like the second your emotions start to bubble up, that is an indication that you're treading down dangerous territory, I guess. um
Hmm. Could be, yeah. But yeah, I mean, the whole bucket thing is really dumb. At least not with, not with having some kind of grading to it. Um,
Yeah.
because it's way too easy to just paint with broad strokes that way, right?
Yeah, it is. And
It's not like that really adds complexity to it. It just adds layers.
mhm,
So
yeah.
there, we fixed the DSM.
Okay. Hey,
That
good.
was easy.
Easy peasy. 30 minutes in, and we've already fixed that shit.
You know
Okay.
what? You know what we should do? We should have an episode where we bring out the DSM and we ask ourselves if we're narcissists.
Oh, yeah. That is actually something that I think is on the list.
Yeah, that would be a super good one.
Oh, yeah. Oh, boy.
If you want to see that, speak up in the comments. Speak now or
Mhm.
forever hold your peace until you click on this episode again and say, where was it? Drag that little red line over to about where we are now. Here, here. And then add your comment. Do you think we're narcissists? You want to see an episode on that? I want to see an episode on that. Not because I'm a narcissist, but because I like watching myself talk.
I
No, wait, I didn't say that, did I?
That'd be an interesting one. Um, well, we're already pretty far in. Um,
Yeah, we should have a guest on to dive into this a little further. Somebody in the field uh, of psychology.
yeah, well, I don't disagree with the concept of psychology or psychiatry. I don't think they're bad things. I think therapy is good.
Mhm.
Um, but I think there's kind of a propensity to trust people to that, oh, that these people know better. Like, I don't think they do. I really don't think they do.
Mm.
And like, ultimately what matters to me, I don't care about degrees or whatever. Like, what matters is helping people better themselves. That's important to me.
Yeah,
And I don't necessarily see psychology or psychiatry doing that.
mm. Yeah. I mean, it's a two-way road because you know, like we've said, pretty much everybody has some kind of problem, but that's being human. And the whole point of like
This is true.
living life is to just keep improving. And that's really all it takes is like everyone's got something that they need vast improvement on compared to other people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, uh, no one's perfect. And so really like the whole field of psychology is really just about like kind of like a helping hand or a guiding light toward uh, what society deems normal. It's just the problem, as I mentioned closer to the head of the show, is like a lot of what society deems normal is culturally varied.
It is. But then again, is are the things that society uh, chooses, are those the important factors, or are there other factors we haven't been paying attention to? Like,
Yeah, I mean it's the factor that matters most to like your coefficient of coexistence, let's say. Uh,
mm-hmm.
Getting along with others
Yeah.
involves a certain degree of acting a certain way in certain
And
situations.
and if everybody somehow is messed up and broken and fucked up according to this system, well then maybe that's the way humans be. Like maybe
Yeah.
that's just how we are. We're all kind of messed up. Like and and then so what is normal at that point?
Yeah. I mean, humans are pretty amazing. The fact that we've come up with a whole system of uh, defining and categorizing, and as flawed as it may be, it's been used to like guide society to a more harmonious balance, perhaps. Whereas a lot of these problems were tossed off as witchcraft and people were killed for no reason back in the day.
That's
Even
true.
all that long ago in our evolutionary history.
I would honestly, okay, so I'm gonna go out on a limb and say the DSM is no different than witchcraft. But it's a step in the right direction. Like we're getting a little bit closer.
Mhm.
So I'm fine with that.
Yeah,
Just
I don't know. Like there might be uh, like an application for AI to assist with something like that, or or maybe quite the opposite. I don't know.
well, AI is it's gonna change our lives for the better. I would argue. There's a lot of people who don't believe that, but
I mean, I wonder if maybe it's time to interview Chat GPT again, because I wonder how AI views uh, the concept of psychology, and
ooh,
how it
yeah.
would like how would AI diagnose a person versus how would a human, uh, let's say somebody with a PhD in psychiatry or whatever, how would they diagnose them and see how that
Well,
stacks
I
up?
would much rather have an AI system analyze me than another human being. Just saying.
But
Put that
but
on the table.
but the AI is probably going to need something to refer to, and that thing
Mm-hmm.
might be DSM.
Probably. Now,
Like they can only go off of what information we hand them, and if the
true.
information we hand them is flawed, then they're going to have uh,
This is true. You
a
are
rotten
correct
core.
in that. This is very true. Um, but it, I
I bet if you ask AI something like, "I have this and this and this and this," like, "What do you think I have?" And well, of course, AI, like with its built-in liability program, would be like, "I can't give you that answer because I'm not a licensed psychologist, but according to the DSM, you're fucking nuts." Like
which is literally everybody.
Mhm.
Nobody is sane according to the DSM. No one's sane. Like, that should tell you something. And it should also be kind of uh, uh, like a luminary that like, hey, you know, we're not all crazy. Just yeah.
Hmm. It's got to be a better way.
I Rodney King. Can't we all just get along?
If only it were that easy.
Mm-hmm. I wish.
I mean, people have to arrive at their own conclusions, and like ultimately, growth just happens from within. Like it's all about personal choices to, uh, change values on the fly. A lot of people. I think a lot of people were just raised to think values are a thing that's set in stone, that everybody shares in the exact same capacity. But that's just not true.
No, it's a relative thing.
Yeah.
But human values are certainly relevant in that regard.
Hmm. Well, I think we covered quite a bit of the
Uh, yeah.
dumb, stupid manual.
uh,
I forget what it actually stands for.
yeah.
I, I, I don't know. Who cares?
Well, yeah, exactly. That's the point. It's like, well, if you can't even define the like structure of a thing, does it even matter?
Hmm.
Uh, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
good question as to who all is writing that.
A lot of people who stand to gain from government action and stuff like that. Yeah. I
Yeah, that is kind of a conflict of interest. But hmm.
like I wouldn't have a problem with a book that has been penned for the purpose of completely separatedly um, creating a system, but I don't think this is. I'm a little bit skeptical. Um,
Yeah, people in their buckets.
yeah. Well, so um,
Oh, bucket.
fuck shit. uh, okay, well, that's a song that isn't in. That's a that's a forgotten song.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we haven't released that one.
Nope, nope. Uh, well, so yeah,
Yep, yep. Well, that's probably about all the time we got for that one.
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah. Can't wait to see the comment section on this one. We're gonna get chewed out.
This is definitely gonna get people riled up. And that's
People's entire career is based on the DSM and shit. Like their Bible. Sorry.
Well,
Not sorry though.
sorry, not sorry. That should be a t-shirt.
It probably is.
Yeah. If not, it should be.
If not, why not?
Why not?
Prone to anger.
Okay, well, that was a lot of fun. Yeah. So, okay, well, um, I had a thought, but I've forgotten it. So.
It's heads. We'll end the show. Oh, heads. How about that? It was divine intervention. George Washington himself told us to stop talking.